Today, we're going to introduce capabilities-based performance management as an emerging field that is being developed. And over the course of the next few sessions, we want to share what we know, what we've learned, and what we're developing. As many of you probably have experienced in your jobs, we've been struggling with value and portfolio management in various aspects of our organizations, not just IT. We do business cases, assessments, economic justifications, but they don't translate necessarily to value realization. In fact, 70% or more, it's said, of our projects fail to deliver anticipated value at all and may just fail outright. So what we want to do here is we want to introduce capabilities-based performance management. We want to extend an invitation to you to participate in the conversation in the community, to leverage your experiences and as a community uncover the means to address this challenge. Dinesh and I have worked together for, I want to say, well, it's over 15 years anyway, and through various organizations at one point, and where Dinesh and I first started working together, he was in a chief scientist role at Microsoft Consulting Services, developing what later became known as business architecture or Microsoft Business Architecture. It was originally known as Motion, which is their business capabilities model. Since that time, he's had, in culmination, over 30 years of experience in technology business management as a field, including strategic planning, value measure, communication, and governance across several industries, in fact. Currently, he is our research lead with a focus on capability-based performance management at Alescent. He's also a board member, principal at the Innovation Value Institute, developing certain capability models and practices for managing business and business value. He's also a founding member and major contributor to the Value Council, focusing on improving value management practices. He's got, in fact, also a patent pending on this system, the capability-driven service-oriented planning. So I want to turn it over to Dinesh to give him plenty of time to go through some of this and allow him to introduce the topic. Dinesh, can I hand it to you?
Thanks, Jame. Appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, being on here. I know for some people it's early morning and some probably ready for lunch or afternoon tea. Glad to have you all here. And I think it's an interesting topic. I think we have been thinking about performance management. I think many of us have been thinking about performance management for a while. And then we ask the question to ourselves, what is performance management? Basically, it comes down to is performing against certain expectations. Then we ask the question is, whose expectations, who are those people, and what expectations do we have? So when we start searching the answer to that particular question, how do we define the expectations? How do we identify who and what those things are? And that led us to this capability-based performance management. So today, I think in this particular session, we'll talk about more, it may sound like more like an abstract, more like a theory. I think it is important to establish the language, a common language for us to drive it further, both deep down in the organization and also the sideways, how we want to manage and monitor and plan performance of any part of the organization, not just IT or HR or finance, but could be thought about any part of the organization. So one of the thing also I get to ask at times is, we're calling it capability-based performance management, and we also hear the term value management. And when I try to answer that question is, what is the difference between performance management and value management? I tend to say, they are basically two sides of the same coin. It's kind of a supplier perspective or a buyer perspective. How am I as a supplier performing against the expectation of my customers? That would be performance management. Am I performing against those expectations? But in order to create value for the customer, and because the value is for the customer, not for me, because I'm performing, the value is created for the customer has to perform, because anything that we deliver to our customer, whether it's an IT system, whether it's a process, whether it's a skill set, or whatever that is, whatever we are delivering to the customer to consume, they have to change their behavior, they have to change their process, they have to change their attitude. Something has to change in the customer environment for them to benefit from what we have delivered. And that's basically is the value management, is if when they are able to change their behavior and they're able to perform the way they want to perform, and we are performing the way they expect us to perform, and together we create value. So that's what I think we are talking about is, so our focus in this conversation is how can I improve my performance to a customer expectation? And once we have done that, then we can pursue the performance of the whole value chain. Of the value chain means our customer performance as well as the people that we buy services from, the downstream of the value chain. So just want to be clear on that. It's not that we are moving away from value management. The question is, without the performance management, there's no value management. That's the position I think we are taking. Okay. So outcome for this session, as Jame already mentioned, and I try to explain, is that let's introduce what is performance, what we mean by the next generation performance management, how the notion of capability fit into that picture, and then how you can move forward with what you want to do. So those are the basic fundamental understanding the questions that we want to answer today. So with that, if you look at, we won't be here, or probably we won't be here if there's no problem. So we do recognize there is an execution gap, and then execution gap exists because for some reason we are not meeting our customer expectations. I mean, there's a stats out there that 60 to 70% of the project fail to meet the customer need, and you wonder why. So definitely there was an expectation early on before those projects were started, but somewhere during the execution of the project or delivery of the project, or by the time they get in the hands of our customer, they said, this is not what I was looking for. So there's a gap in meeting those expectations. And generally what happens, we have seen in the organization is typically most organizations, whether you're talking about from a portfolio standpoint, or you're talking about within the context of a project, organizations do a fairly good job in defining what vision, mission, what objectives that we have, and maybe what strategy is. And strategy is more of an objective than actually how we are going to achieve that. They generally state that we want to grow our business, we want to expand, into new markets, things like that, but they're not necessarily telling us how we are going to achieve that. So the organizations that typically the top management does a fantastic job, but at the operational level, that many times we are focusing on, at the ground level, we are focusing on day-to-day activities, that how we are leveraging our different resources, whether it's finance, people, technologies, how we are operationally leveraging those things and delivering the projects or performing the processes that we do. So there's a gap between what is expected of our management. Management could be, which is basically, in my definition, they're my customers. So they have certain expectations, they have laid out the objectives, and we are doing projects and consuming resources to deliver on those objectives. And because of there's a gap, there's what I call value leakage. The gap between what was expected and what we end up delivering, there's some leakage happen along the way while we were executing those projects and performing the activities that we do at the operation. So how do we fix that? The value gap. And I think the reason, before we fix it, we need to understand why it happens. The reason it happens many times is that most of the metrics that we monitor and manage tend to be operational in nature. Like for example, in HR, we say, okay, how many resumes did we handle, or how many people did we hire? In manufacturing, we say, okay, how many widgets did we produce? In customer service, we talk about how many calls did we take? And if you are, claims and those kind of processing environment, how many claims that we handle, or how many returns. So if you look at all these different activities and the processes that we have in the organization, they tend to be related to those business operation or business activities. So it's not a surprise that when we talk about improvements, those improvements also tend to be operational in nature, because the metrics that we want to impact are operational. And so to improve those metrics, we want to make some operational improvement changes. So that's why, people say, can you give me a better report? Can you, design the system in a way that allows me to do X? So definitely we're not thinking broader and high enough in the sense that, drives the fundamental change in the organization, because we don't know what those metrics are and how much those changes that we are trying to do. The third point here is the alignment and the line of sight. I think my analogy there is that if you have a blurry vision It's not that you cannot achieve your destination. You most likely will achieve your destination with, even with a blurred vision, but along the way, you may fall a few times. It may take longer. You may take a wrong exit and then come back again on the road again. So those are the things that happen when we are either distracted or we don't have a clear line of sight. And I think you can see that happening in every organization every day, because people are trying to do the right thing, but only based on what they know. So if we can create a better line of sight in terms of what our customers are expecting and what we are doing, and how the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, how does it influence or impact those outcomes that our customers, including management, are looking for. If I have that line of sight, most likely as a human being, I'll make a better decision, better informed decision to get there faster, cheaper, and deliver the value or deliver the outcome that people are looking for. So those are the kind of things I think we need to fix going forward, how we do that to get to the level of performance, to produce the outcome and meet the expectations of our customers. So let's talk about how can we bridge the gap. And definitely, I think, as we all know, that sometimes we start with what we call practices. There are the 5 P's that we try to manage day in, day out at the operational level. What policies do we have? What processes do we have, and how good they are doing? What skill set and how many people and what skill set do they have? What technologies that we are using and how well they are performing? So definitely we have those 5 P's that at the operational level, we are always trying to manage and monitor how well they are performing. What do we need to change there? Definitely our customers have expectations. So there are 3 types of metrics. Typically those outcomes or expectations relate to the strategic measures, financial measures, and operational measures. Operational measures that I talked about, at the activity level, what you could be measuring in terms of the performance of that particular activity, like, how many people did we hire as part of our hiring process, for example, right? The financial measure is definitely more related to the cost and the revenue and other type of financial metrics that organizations typically have, depending upon if you're a public sector and private sector, you may have different type of financial metrics associated with it, performing within the budget versus generating more revenue. So those kind of things. Strategic measures are like brand value or market share, and those kind of things, although they can be translated into financial measures later on or by applying some discipline to it. But generally, organizations and the management typically have those strategic measures also. Particularly, I think in case of public sector, for example, you may have more strategic objectives, how you are improving the life of the citizens and things like that, which you may not be able to quantify financially, not right away. Or operationally, you don't have any control because those are the external customers, but you may have some strategic goals that you have as a public sector organization. So we definitely have good outcomes defined for us. And we have practices that we manage. The gap that we need to fill in is what we call is that we need capabilities. So the capabilities allow us to bridge between the practices, how we are going to deliver the outcome, and the capability is basically managing what things that we need to have, defining what we need to have in order to produce the desired outcome. So definitely there are 3 C's there. One is, in terms of what is the scope of the capabilities. Because to generate a particular outcome, if you want to drive customer satisfaction, or you want to become more digital, or you want to become, improve your supply chain, claims processing, whatever the functional area or the objective that you have there, definitely you can say, what kind of capabilities do I need in order to improve and deliver those outcomes? And then from there, what kind of change in my policies, processes, people skills, platform that we need to do. Many times we start having conversation in those processes, people, and we get bogged down with what is going on at that level and what we are doing today, how it will change and all the things. And we forget that, what is our ultimate goal on making those improvements. So once we get into we lose sight of what outcome we are looking for and in what time frame. So the capabilities allows us to stay focused on peel the onion properly. We are trying to achieve certain outcome. These are the capabilities that we need, and these are the underlying practices that we need to change in our organizations to get there. So that's the idea, is that you might be doing it, but it's a matter of organizing your thought process and organizing the linkages between how a change in a practice improves a particular capability that drives a particular outcome. So the idea, the point that we want to make in capability-based performance management to close this execution gap is, you still have to manage your project, you still have to manage your resources, that's what we do at the operational level. But in order to close the gap, you have to start managing the capabilities. You have to define what those capabilities are and then start managing those capabilities. So because that the bridge allows us to be close to the outcomes and also be on the close to the practices that we are monitoring and managing on a day-to-day basis. So what is a capability? So I think we have been talking about, so let me use a simple example that many of us probably are familiar with and perform. So if I consider my own house as an organization in a simple terms, then mowing the lawn is one of the capability that I need. So there's a scope of, that I need to mow the lawn. The competency that I need is that I need to do the least amount of effort that it takes to mow the lawn. And by the way, when I'm edging the side of my, of the lawn, it does the automatically edging. So those are the kind of competency that I'm looking for. The capacity wise, I'm saying, okay, if I have a half-acre lawn or something, I should be able to do that nonstop without taking any breaks within about 30 minutes or so. So those are the kind of thing that we say, okay, in order to, for a capability, how we define a particular capability, and then characteristics of the capabilities in terms of the competency and capacity. Then we also talk about practices. What practices do I need in order to enable me to mow the lawn? So that definitely, when we talk about the policies, we talk about, you should be mowing the lawn every week and mow the lawn when there's no rain, or move in the alternate direction. So you're providing some guidance how you can be effective and how can we be productive in mowing the lawn. So those are the policies that with any process or anything that we do, any capabilities that we have, there's going to be some guidelines or guidance around, which we call policies. Then definitely there's a process or activities. And I'm sure, I'm not going to go into the detail here, but there are things that you have to do every time you mow the lawn. Then of course, when we mow the lawn, we always think about the technology or the tool, that we use. And I think that's a challenge that many times we have in our business organization too, is that whenever the business people ask for something, the IT people jump to the technology. But there's also the people aspect of it, that is the person behind the technology is skilled enough, is it capable enough to actually be part of that particular process and deliver the capability that is expected to deliver. And then of course the platform means the technology here in this case, and the characteristics and the features of that particular platform. And then of course the performance of people, process, and platform, that together are they performing at the level that allows me to have non-stop operation for mowing the lawn. So you can think about it, although it looks like a simple or a trivial type of capability, but we think in the same way, whether it's a business capability or any capability within IT or within any other part of the organization at home or otherwise that we work on. So the outcome that we can expect is very simple, that, hey, I'm done in 20 minutes. So that will be my operational metrics. Increasing in property value because I'm maintaining my lawn is the financial value or financial metrics. Being the best lawn in the neighborhood is my strategic value, that people walk by and they appreciate, the place that I have. So those are the kind of metrics that we all use intuitively or intentionally or otherwise in whatever we do. But we're saying, why don't we apply the same mindset and thinking when we are thinking about business capabilities or improvement in the businesses or improvement in any part of the organization, including IT. So another question that I get asked is the capability versus process. What's the difference? Because we have been using the notion of business process reengineering, all these terms that we have been using for last 20, 30 years. What does that mean? So nice way is not that it's either or. I think it's both. It's a matter of packaging or how we are defining at what level we are focusing on. So I say to the capability versus process, the capability is what an organization does, whereas process is how does the organization do what it wants to do. So it's more like a peeling the onion. Capability is a wrapper that defines what we want, so we can focus on what we are delivering, what's the outcome that we are producing because of that capability, and the processes are how we are performing or delivering that particular capability at a particular time. The process tend to change over time. So if I use an example here, and in this case, although it can be applied to any organization, whether you are, I'm taking a sales example, but you can think of procurement, you can think of supply chain, you can think of even finding a job or hiring process. You can look at how the way we do those things have changed, but the capability of selling goods and services has always been there. Every organization that it makes money by selling goods and services, they always had this capability. It's just that there is a level of competency and level of capacity that has changed over time. So if I peel the onion on this one, on this particular capability, for example, once upon a time, and not once upon a time doesn't mean many years ago, maybe about 7-8 years ago, we used to say, okay, we used to get call from the inside salesperson, making a cold call, finding the new potential customers. Then the sales rep will go and physically meet that particular client, position the product and serve, and provide the quote. So it was very much driven by the supplier, by the seller, or by the vendor, and making a contact with the potential customer. Today, in most organizations, I would say that we have this information about product and services available on the web or in the mobile app or whatever that is, and the customer is able to search and review that information together, and then basically it qualifies a particular supplier or vendor they want to pursue, and they contact and then checks the price and all the stuff. So it's very much a customer-driven activity rather than a supplier-driven activity. So the process has changed. And because the process has changed, our platform, our people skills, our policies have changed. So all the 5 Ps. So that's the whole idea between capability and the processes. We are asking, what is the organization doing to sell goods and services? What capabilities does it have? And what changes do we need to make in our 5 Ps in order to get there? So to create a different outcome, you have to change your scope of that particular capability. You have to change the competency of that particular capability. You have to change maybe the capacity of that particular capability. And once we recognize those are the 3 Cs that we need to change, then we can say, okay, what does it imply and impact, and how it impact the 5 Ps that we have, the way we do things today.
Dinesh, I got a question here from the field. What is the difference between a capability and a service, particularly when thinking about service orientation versus capability orientation? You talk about capability and process, but what about services?
Sometimes I ask that question myself, capability, service, and process. And you wonder, like, if I ask the question, what do you think of a service? What do you mean by service? So service by definition implies a certain expectation, in the sense that it provides me certain set of capabilities at a certain performance level. I don't care how you do it, what you do, but services is again another higher level of that, basically encapsulating a bunch of capabilities with certain specific outcome. So service is made up of capabilities, and capabilities are made of processes. Probably that's the easiest way to think about it. And service is just like a product. So when we buy a product or we sell a product, we specify the feature set of that product, and we also specify the warranty or the performance characters and what you'll be able to achieve with it. So that packaging of feature, functionality, and the outcome is what we consider as a product, and I will put the service in the same bucket. Capability is one level down, there could be individual capability that make up part of that particular services, and it has different, depending upon the competency and the capacity, you may be producing a different outcome, and the processes are how you get there. The service mindset is synonymous to a customer mindset. For example, if you take HR as an example, HR providing providing a capability of recruiting and compensation management, talent management, all the process that we have in HR. We can say, if I talk about from a process perspective, the people will talk about how we do recruiting or how we do hiring or how we do on ramping. So people tend to talk about how we do those things. But if I talk about HR as a capability, then I'll say, okay, this is what we do for you as a hiring manager or as a manager in general. This is what we do for you because that's the capability that we have, and this will allow you to do that. If I take it to the service level, then you're talking about, I treat you as a customer. You are a hiring manager or a manager of managing people, and these are the services that we provide to you that, and this is what it allows you to do with those services. So you're treating the other person as your customer rather than just as a partner or as a part of the process. So that the mindset and attitude changes when you go from process to capability to the service. So on the same notion, we just talk about, customer orientation and the service and capabilities. That's another thing is that in the performance management, the way we look at it is that everybody has a customer, internal or external. So even if you are a database administrator or whether you are a HR person or you are an accountant or a controller, everybody in the organization has a customer. So if we think of that customer, if we think of them as a customer, the people that we serve, then we can understand what their expectations are. And then we can talk about what capabilities that I need to have in order to meet their expectations. And once I understand that one, then I can think about the 5 Ps that I need to manage. And then if I have suppliers that are delivering part of my capabilities, then I can also set a right expectation and right, capabilities or expect the right capabilities from my suppliers. So you can definitely go downstream if you start as an individual, who your customers are, what their expectations are, and what capabilities that you need, and then go downstream from there. Similarly, I think just like individually, we cannot clap with one hand. So definitely we need number of functions or number of people working together to create an outcome for our customer. So definitely whether you are at the enterprise level, the business level, or the functional level, we also need to have a vertical integration and vertical alignment to make sure that everybody is aligned both in terms of their capability, competency, and capacity, so that collectively we are delivering the outcome that our collective customers are looking for. So the performance management is not just individual performance management, but it's a collective performance management because the customer expect that outcome, not necessarily what individual teams are doing. So I mean, coming from an IT background, we say, okay, my server is up 99% of the time, but the customer says, no, but my email is down 80% of the time. How can you say that it's not the problem? Typically, I think we're not looking at the problem holistically or the solution holistically. Each function may be performing very well, but collectively we are failing for our customer. So that's what the modern performance management has to be, is that how we apply customer mindset in not only what we do as an individual, but the way we do it as an organization. If we have that understanding, I think now we can start doing better planning. If we plan right, we can execute right, and we can deliver right. So the way we look at the capabilities, we tend to organize capabilities into four buckets: strategy capabilities, functional capabilities, workforce, the people, the employees, contractors who need to be involved in doing the job. They need some personnel-oriented capabilities, and then of course, platform. Platform could be IT platform or could be the business platform capabilities that we could be talking about. So once we understand what those capabilities are and to create a particular outcome, what capabilities that we need to improve, now your strategy coming top down is much more actionable and tangible and guides the rest of the organization what they need to change in their one of the 5 Ps. So that's why if you look at the downstream here, alignment, maturity, execution, accountability, and then ultimately realizing the value, all those things become simpler to achieve because we understand what capabilities we are trying to improve for the organization for a particular outcome. So it's not just a bunch of objectives that management is providing us, but we also have a clear understanding of what capabilities we are trying to improve in terms of its competency and capacity. So let's talk about the framework now. And for many of you, If you're familiar with capability maturity model concept that CMI has introduced many, many years ago, the use of the maturity model in the context of planning, assessment planning, and performance management, I think that's something that we found not only quite useful, but also very productive and get everybody organized and moving in the right direction or in the same direction. The business has a requirement. We collect a long list of those, many times I call them the wish list or the shopping list. So, so there's a long list, but we don't know what to do with that long list. So the capability model help us reorganize in some ways that long list of requirements in some kind of a structure. So first thing is that we are understanding what are the building blocks. What are the different components, both in terms of the performance, in terms of the utility, the functionality, in terms of the operational characteristics. So we can think about all those requirements that we've been listening to, that how we want to organize them into what buckets. That's what we call building blocks. And what is the level of maturity or the competency that we need to have for each one of them as we move forward. Because many times what we have found is that in the wish list, people are looking for nirvana or the best practices, but they don't know what the intermediate things or the things they could do now, the things that are dependent on what they need to achieve the level of capability they're looking for. So by organizing into a maturity model, it implies that this also gives you a roadmap. So if your time to delivery and time to market is critical, you want to get something going on quickly rather than later. If you're trying to use agile methodology, for example, so what kind of capabilities, what things that we can do now versus later. So you need some kind of a roadmap. This capability model helps you develop that roadmap, organize the things that you could do, what you might be doing already, which is your initial state, the things you could be doing now to deliver value or deliver the certain outcomes now, and then start developing the roadmap where you want to be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road. So it helps the conversation and helps with the planning process. It also helps with number 2 and number 3, say, what are the enabling practices? There's plenty of knowledge that we all have that, okay, how do I going to do something? If I want to change my process or I want to acquire, a new capability, what technology can do. So we tend to know what those solutions are, but we don't know the context. So the capability model gives me the context, and the enabling practices give me how I'm going to achieve. What do I need? So rather than discovering every time what those things are, I can associate if in order to achieve level 3 maturity or competency in my capabilities, I will need this kind of practice. So there's a body of knowledge that people can use to start doing better planning. So if you think that, say, for argument's sake, you are at level 2, because the kind of capabilities that you have are defined as being at level 2 and delivering certain value, and you're not happy with the value that you're getting today. You're not performing where you need to perform in order to create the outcome that you're looking for. Now you can look in this capability map is that at what level I need to be to create the outcome that I'm looking for. So many times what happens is that when we chase best practices, we're chasing what other people have saw, what value they want to realize, and they define their own practices. And because they realize that value, they define the practices to support that value, and we think that I need to be there, without first rationalizing whether the value they thought they want to get is the same value that I want. So now you can decide, you're matching the expectation and the capabilities that you need. And not to say that 2 years down the road, you need to, the expectations will change. That may ask you to be at a higher level of maturity. Now you can plan for it. So if I'm buying a new platform, a new technology today for the say, let's say I'm level 2, and my customers are the outcome, the expectation they have, they're basically asking me to be at level 3. But being an architect, whether it's a business architect or enterprise architect or a technology architect, I can say, aha, although my business is not asking for those capabilities today, but there are level 4, level 5 capability I should be thinking about. So the choices that I'm making today, am I making those choices in the context of that I may have to evolve to level 4 and 5 down the road? Not that I want to spend tomorrow's money today because the business is not asking for it, but I should be preparing myself that I can get my customers to be where they want to be because I'm kind of anticipating those capabilities, but I don't have to deliver. So I think by looking at the model, you are minimizing the chances of over-engineering, over-delivering certain capabilities, or undermining the capabilities that are critical to delivering the value that business is expecting today.
Dinesh, actually, I've got an excellent question that is almost a follow-up to that as well from someone else saying, when reporting on all benefits for capabilities, some of these tend to be qualitative only. How do you measure these to get the full picture of the benefits?
I think that there is a process that I have when somebody says, I have a benefit. If you have a benefit, the first thing that I ask is you should be able to observe that benefit in some form or shape. I think many times what happens is we leave it at a qualitative level because the benefit happens somewhere else in the value chain. And we don't have the direct visibility, or visibility means insight, or control over where that particular outcome is created or that value is being created. So we end up instead of anticipating or quantifying that particular thing, we leave it at the qualitative level. So if we do our homework and if we follow the what I call value flow map, the term that I use, and as part of the framework, we call it value flow map. So if I start connecting the dots, if I have a certain capability, who are my customers and who are the customers of my customers? So let's say, for example, I'm a database administrator. My customers are my application developers. Application developers have business folks, and the business folks have other organizations. So if I follow the chain, I will start recognizing, by doing what I'm doing here, how does it impact the behavior activities of my customers and the behavior activities of their customers? And if I follow that chain far enough, I can probably quantify anything that I want. So I think many times the qualitative, in my mind particularly, the qualitative is that we have not applied enough rigor in understanding where that change will happen and what that change means to the customer or the consumer of that particular capability. So the model, I think, helps, as I said in the very beginning, is you can only plan what you know. So having the model helps us plan better. Not that it will solve all the world's problem, but it helps you plan better because you have a line of sight, even if the capabilities and the outcome that our customers are looking for at level 3, but I can see where my business might be going at level, down the road, and I can plan ahead. Similarly, you can educate the customer. I've been into many business meetings when I ask them, what do you want to be? What do you want to be 2-3 years down when you grow up? And many times they're always talking about the pain point. They're looking at the rear view mirror, looking at what pain that I had yesterday, and can you give me a medicine for that particular pain? But they're not thinking about what new pain they might encounter tomorrow because their competition or somebody else has inflicted new pain, because they're making changes, but we're not thinking about it. So having this capability model, capability conversation, you're also helping your business counterparts, if you're in IT or any other part of the organization, helping them, your customer, think farther than they are thinking today. So one of the challenges that we all have is when we introduce a new concept like capability models, how do I start? Definitely there are a number of organizations out there in the industry. There are a lot of work that we have done at Alescent, where it's okay. Therefore, the common capabilities or processes in an organization, we can define what those capability models are, develop the maturity model, define the underlying practices, understand the dependencies one capability has on other capabilities, what kind of metrics that would make sense. So a lot of questions I think everybody's asking, and it's okay, how do I jumpstart myself? So definitely there are a body of knowledge out there that we can leverage. So there is an organization called Innovation Value Institute. They have defined 35 critical capabilities within IT organization, how IT could be looking at itself for managing its own performance and managing business value of IT. So definitely for each one of them, there's a whole capability model, maturity model, dependency, and everything. Similarly, at Alescent, we have defined, the strategic capabilities, the functional capabilities, the workforce capabilities, and organizing them in a similar way, what those capabilities are, what those building blocks are, and what the competency maturity model, the roadmap looks like for each one of them. Similarly, there are other organizations like TBM Council and Value Council and other things for different domains. They have drilled down into how you define those capabilities and then how you develop a roadmap and a plan for those things. So if you're interested in any of these areas, please ping Jame or me, and definitely we can get you access to some of these frameworks that are already there to help you jumpstart.
I just got I think this might be more of a comment, well, a bit of a question as well, Dinesh. It says, I'm seeing a lot of capabilities here. Where do we start?
So there are two places to, if you know where the pain is, that's the easy part. So if you say, okay, I'm challenged with portfolio management, or I'm challenged with the demand management for my business, and I'm speaking more of an IT language here, but same thing you can say if I'm an HR person, or if I'm in a functional area like claims processing or sales management. So if you know particular domain or functional domains or some areas of the organization that is not performing where you like to be, and for various reasons, then definitely in the landscape of all this capability that you see, you can say, okay, where is my anchor? So I say, okay, here I found one or two capabilities in this map. That's my anchor. Let me start there. And then once I dig deeper into that particular capability, I'll find what are the dependencies this capability has on other capabilities. So if I'm at level 2 in that particular capability as a demand management, and I need to be level 4 to what we need to do to improve our demand management, the model will help you understand what your dependencies are. Hey, in order to improve your demand management, by the way, you also have to improve your governance. So if your governance is weak, you will not be very good at doing demand management, particularly at level 4. So that's where you can start, what I call start anywhere, go everywhere. So you can start focusing on where the pain is, and then using the body of knowledge in these models to help you guide what else in the organization that you have to think about, evaluate, and plan. So that's one way if you know your starting point. If you don't, most of these models, and we have done that at Alescent, is we have also created an executive assessment. So looking at the broad picture, let's say take for example, in case of IVI with 35 critical capabilities. So we have about 50, 60 questions that we ask at a very high level from a management perspective. And based on that assessment, we can identify what are the top 5 capabilities or 7 capabilities you should be focusing on, because that's where the bang for the buck is. And that's where the biggest pain points are, where the best return on your the value or the investment would be. So that gives you the starting point when we don't know where to focus. So doing an executive assessment or a high-level assessment across those things, or peeling the onion by focusing on a particular capability and then branching out. So that's the model. And then definitely, I think in terms of execution and to make it, operationalize those things, I mean, body of knowledge, we have plenty of body of knowledge. You go to TOGAF, you go to BRM Institute, you go to, APQC, and, a lot of places have a lot of body of knowledge. But then how do you operationalize? How do you make sure that the people in the organization are making the right decision, leveraging the information, and moving in the direction that you want to do? So in addition to the body of knowledge, what we have also invested in as part of the capability-based performance management is tooling up in such a way that everybody in the organization who is making a decision, who is doing the planning for themselves or their customers, they can use the tool and the body of knowledge to get there faster than otherwise. So the capability models, the metrics associated with those capability models, the dependencies, the road mapping, all those things that you typically would need to do assess, plan, manage, and improve on an ongoing basis, we have able to host that particular body of knowledge in the tool and make that tool available to anybody in the organization, so they can do their own planning, their own assessment, and collectively we are moving in the right direction. Going back to the notion that I said, people can only plan what they know. So it's not the question of that me as an architect or me as a business manager, do I know about everything in the organization? Because the decisions are being made everywhere in every part of the organization. I want to empower them with the body of knowledge, with the tools, so they can be better informed in making a better informed decision. So with that, I think we probably are a little bit over time, James, right? So I think my call to action to you guys is definitely, as James said earlier on, it's a two-part story. We are thinking about this framework. We are trying to develop it further, where we are today. And if this area is of interest to you, whether you have the subject matter knowledge or you're passionate about those things, we'd love to be part of this community. So I'd like to follow up what your expectations are, what role that you can play, be part of the community. And then definitely what we have done, what you can leverage, the body of knowledge and the tool that I just talked about. If there's a way that you want to think about it, use it in any way we can help you going in the direction that you like to go, I think we'd like to have those conversations with you after this call.